Hey everyone. I had actually started a different project, but I wanted to switch gears because I was just helping out my sister with some stuff recently and decided we were going to do some stuff for these pieces for her new house. So the desk that I finished in the previous video, she's going to want for her office. So we took this file cabinet over here and we are going to make it match so that the office aesthetic is all the same. And then these are going to be repainted to a different color to more match the new house. So I'm just switching gears so we get these done first, since I want to give her the priority, and I'm going to take you all along for the ride. So stay tuned and let's get to it.
Kicking things off, I'm just removing all this old hardware. When I started this, I wasn't sure if we would be reusing these. I noticed a chipped part here that had the chip still intact, so I got some glue under it and clamped that down before I started sanding. I sanded the whole piece with a 120 grit just to get everything ready for paint. I used a sponge sander for this detailed portion, and then I noticed there was a bit of buildup of glue right here, so I used a chisel to just scrape that off. Then I filled in some wood chips I found with some wood filler before continuing sanding and using the sanding sponge on the drawers. Moving on to the chairs, this was just a lot of sanding, and while I was sanding I noticed there were some protruding nails. So I removed those and added some wood glue and then used a brad nailer to tack it back down. There was also this sticky glue trap residue on the back, and I just used some acetone to clean that up really easily. There was also these screws holding some parts together, which I decided to remove to switch to dowels later. And this rail was split, so I added some glue before clamping that together. For the dowels, I had to drill out the holes to the proper size. Then I just glued up some dowels and glued in the holes and tapped that in and cut it flush with the chair. After that, it was just a lot more sanding to make sure to get every part of these chairs. I mostly used the power sander. I also used a sanding sheet for those hard to reach areas. I mainly needed the sheet to get in between these hard to reach areas, between all the pieces of wood. The small gaps at the bottom here, my orbital sander was not able to fit in, so of course I needed it there as well. The whole time I'm also just giving field tests everywhere to make sure it all feels smooth, because it definitely doesn't look smooth. Down where the chairs attached to the rockers was some pretty bad paint chipping near where it connected, so I had to sand extra hard there to make sure everything came out smooth. I made a quick pivot back to the file cabinet so I could get the old hardware holes filled in. My sister decided not to use the same old hardware and to get hardware that's going to match the desk that she's going to be using.
Hey everyone. Real quick, I just admittedly wanted to talk about how I'm pretty bad at wearing eye protection when it comes to spraying paint. The goggles I had just didn't really fit with the mask I had, so I figured in order to be sure I wear my eye protection as well, which I know a lot of flippers aren't doing when they should, what I did is go ahead and upgrade to one of these full face masks so that I can be sure anytime I'm protecting my breathing, I'm also going to be protecting my eyes anytime I'm spraying, because it is quite important. So just thought I'd share that. Let's get to it.
Alright, so now I've got my eyes, ears, nose, and mouth all protected, and I can get to spraying. I'm just laying down a couple coats of primer on these chairs, making sure that as I spray it, everything looks like it's flat, because of all the calico colors on this, it's hard to tell. So with everything a uniform color, I can really see if there's any other issues I need to sand down or any gaps to fill. And doing chairs of this nature is really difficult to get all the surfaces covered. So moving those aside, I'm pivoting over to the file cabinet, spraying the same primer over this, And what I've learned after doing a few projects now is my first coat of primer is really just to highlight any issues that I may need to fix. And spraying the file cabinet did reveal one such issue, which was the wood grain. So I switched over to using a roller and an oil-based primer to really make sure to fill in the wood grain and cover up those small holes. I would really hate to set off someone's tryptophobia by not doing this step. The benefit of using an oil-based primer is its superior coverage, but the downside is it will take longer for it to cure. So I have to give it some time before I move to the next step. Once the primer cured, I went ahead and sanded down the roller texture. I used a 120 grit here, which is a bit aggressive for what I'm doing. So I did end up sanding through the primer in some spots. So to fix that, I went ahead and gave it a quick spray with the primer again. Now the top of this file cabinet is recessed, which creates these two seams. I went ahead and used a paintable caulk in the color white in order to fill those in and get a more flush finish there. Next, I got the bottom portion masked off so I could spray the primary color for the top. Then I flipped it, masking off the top so I could spray the bottom portion with its primary color. And both the top and the bottom got about 3 coats of their respective colors. And once this was done, I coated it in a clear protective coat. Next up, I took my hardware jig here and got it set up so I could make markings for the new hardware to be installed. I center the jig, then I set the width for the hardware holes and use a punch tool to mark where I'm going to drill before drilling out the holes and then installing the hardware. This new jig I got is awesome. Everything locks in place, so once I had set it for the first drawer, all I had to do was lay it on top of the next one and repeat the process. No further adjustment needed. And this is the final step for the file cabinet, so after this we'll move back over to the chairs. For painting the chairs, I started with flipping them over. This made the bottom much more accessible. I wanted to paint the bottoms as well, even though it's not going to be showing. Painting the underside of everything will ensure that this has the best protection possible. Now once the bottoms dried, I flipped them over so I could do the same process on the top. I covered everything in about 2 coats. It was less than normal just because the overall spray is more focused for the small areas. I let the paint cure for a full 48 hours before I brushed each one with a spar urethane. This is a tedious process having to brush everything on, but I didn't want to spray it because of all the spontaneous combustion warnings. That made me a bit scared. But using spar urethane ensures that these will have the best protection for outdoor, since spar urethane offers UV protection and it's flexible, so if there's any expanding or contracting, it can move with the furniture. So here we have the file cabinet how it was before. Not too bad, but we wanted to change it to match. This is the better of the 2 chairs. Still has a bit of dings on the bottom and the paint isn't in great condition. And then the worst chair, this one had cracking and chipping paint everywhere. So that is the before view and the after, now that they're all completed. The chair's redone in a custom slate gray color that I mixed, and the file cabinet is made to match the desk I did in my previous video.
All right, everyone. Well, that is a wrap for this project. I did really want to get some footage of me getting the stuff over at my sister's house so we could see it in its new home. But unfortunately, the logistics of the whole thing it didn't work out for me to show that part. But I just want to thank you all for watching. And as always, leave comments, drop a like, and subscribe if you want to see more of this stuff. I've got some new stuff underway, as you can see behind me. That'll be my next project coming soon. And we'll see you in the next one.